All right, Tuesday, May 16th, 2023. Oh, okay, so just coming back from the gym. I haven't shaved in a few days. It's sometimes good for the skin, to take a break from that. But I'll get back to life a little bit. So we went to the city center of Lviv this weekend. I just want to talk about a restaurant review. And there's this place called Arsenal, I think, or something like this. It's like this ribs restaurant, ribs and beer, and you eat with your hands. It was fun. It was like a medieval times kind of setting, in America. It's like something like that. Not really with the show. That's another restaurant, Meat and Justice, but there you get utensils. So I was a bit thrown off guard. But I don't drink, so. But the meat was good. I mean, we had to eat it with our hands, and even there was like a fried egg on top of a potato, and we had to eat that. We opted for beef and not pork. There's a lot of, there's a reason why 3 religions don't eat pork. Muslims, Jews, and Hindus. Well, Hindus don't eat meat at all, theoretically. So we don't eat pork. We've read enough information about it, the chemicals and the way the body composition of the pig and the fat, and the hard fat and all this stuff. It's nothing healthy. There's nothing manly about it. If anything, it'll just take you to an early grave if you eat a lot of it, and it won't be a pleasant trip on your way there. I would avoid it at all costs. But we opted for the beef, and it was fun. They had like fresh vegetables and the potatoes, and you had to eat it all with your fingers. I mean, I guess it's more fun if you're drinking beer, but I have my opinions about beer like I have about pork too, or alcohol in general. And not Muslim, it's just I want to be healthy. So that's a highly recommend restaurant. The quality of the food itself was good. I mean, maybe bring your own silverware, because it does make a mess. It does make a big mess. Maybe that's a lesson, is always like have some silverware packed in your girlfriend's purse, that you can take out, or have a Swiss Army knife with the spoon and the knife and everything, with you at all times. So, what do we want to talk about today is the spring offensive. So it's I guess that's been talked about a lot in the media, and we're seeing signs it's starting. And the goal, I guess, of the ultimate goal of the spring offensive is to get the Russians out of Ukraine. But I don't know, it just from what I'm seeing in the news, and then all these leaks from the U.S. side, these top secret people with top secret clearances working for the Russians. It looks like, and I looked at some of the maps, it's going to be tough. I don't know, my view is like Ukraine should just break the land bridge and cut off Crimea from the Donbass. If they can do that this year, that's a victory in of itself, because now Ukraine is attacking, so they need the overwhelming force. When you're the attacker, you need minimum 3 to 1, of the adversary. Before, the reasons why Ukraine did well was they were on the defense. Going on the offense, it's much harder fought battles. I mean, Ukraine is getting some victories, but we don't know if those are like the Stalingrad kind of victories, where the Russians are retreating with resistance just to wear out the Ukrainians, because it's not true what doesn't kill you only makes you stronger. What doesn't kill you only makes it easier to kill you next time, or maims you, or leaves you disabled. So it's hard to tell, with the victories. And granted, like every day friends are, being drafted to the army and stuff, and really worried about them. But it's, I don't know, with what Ukraine has, they do a lot, but they need 10 times more to actually mount a proper offensive. So because there's this river, this Dnipro River that has to be crossed. And from what I understand, they don't have this riverine warfare and then the air support to go with it, to establish a beachhead, get a bridge built, defend that bridge both from the air and the ground. It takes a lot of people and resources. I mean, everyone's talking about the tanks and everything. This is like enough for a battle. It's not enough for to make a strategic difference. And I don't know if the West is holding back on purpose because they're afraid to offend Russia. But like I said, I've been saying all along, this is the battle for Western civilization. But looking reasonably, just objectively here, I don't know. I'm not in charge, thank God. I don't want to be making these decisions. It's if they can get close to Crimea, I guess, and then just keep harassing it and make it unbearable, but not go in. Going into Crimea is an impossibility based on history. You need a lot. You need to come from both sides. You need to come from the sea. You need to do an airborne assault from the air, just a strict ground assault, from one point, and it's a choke point. It's only 5 kilometers wide, and then you'd end up going into a kill box, because you're going through a narrow strip and then into an open plain. So it's kind of like the way the 300 Spartans defended against the Persians. They were able to exploit a bottleneck where everyone had to, even though you had 100,000 men, they could only come through like a few at a time, because of the width of the opening, that they had to line up in sequence instead of being spread out. So they were able to use the terrain to their advantage. But in this case, in Crimea, who's ever defending Crimea can use terrain to their advantage. So what I see happening is that they can perhaps break this land bridge somewhere, get in between, the Russian forces, get into the, and then, get them to surrender or, just wipe them out, whatever. They've got these new heavy missiles from England. They can hit some supply depots, and cut off their supply chain or use those heavy missiles to take out that bridge in Crimea and just keep harassing them, but don't go in. I would just put it under siege. It's just like the way Mehmet took Istanbul. They call him Fatih or Mehmet the Great, the 17, 18-year-old Turkmen who took Constantinople and was the founder of Istanbul. He just kept pounding it. He didn't want to go in. He knew that would be too hard. And he just kept pounding it until he broke their will and then went in. And I think it's got to be something like that. Just keep pounding Crimea. And I imagine by now all the pro-Ukrainians in Crimea have been deported or are not there. And everyone who's living in Crimea, that's been some sort of reward for being a good Russian or something. I don't know if they have human shields there or not. See, that's like why I wouldn't want to be this decision maker. But, they have only a year and a half. It's election in America. It's not looking good for Ukraine. I mean, even if the Democrats win, it'll be by a slim margin, and they're going to have to make compromises, I imagine. And in Europe, it's faltering. Like I said in the last video, Europe is not up to task. They're already faltering. You have France, Italy, Hungary, even, if Turkey gets this new president, that would be a huge win for Ukraine. He definitely wants to be Western facing, but we've seen how that goes. The current president of Turkey is a massive dictator and playing both sides. So, like I said, these are all the thoughts I have about how things are going here. And, the draft is in full swing. It's not easy, I tell you this. Everyone's making it sound like, okay, the Russians are just stupid and they're cannon fodder. Yeah, that's true. But the problem is there's a lot of them. It's like killing cockroaches. It's really easy to step on cockroaches, but when there's hundreds of millions of them, the elephant can step on the cockroaches, but eventually gets tired, and then they get overwhelmed. And that's kind of the Russian. I think the Russian playbook here is that they're just throwing numbers. They've always been like that. The Russians have never been actually good engineers, good strategists. They've always played this numbers game. The Stalingrad thing is they let the Germans in, and then they let the winter come in and use the seasons. But that's not a sophisticated strategy, like Norman Schwarzkopf's Hail Mary in Iraq, or some of the maneuvers you saw in the U.S. Civil War. They in Battle of Gettysburg and things like this, that there were some very simple maneuvers that made a big difference, or like George Washington on the Delaware River, with what became later the Army Rangers, doing the first special operations, to use a few people to really hit a strategic note and hit a decision point type of thing. The Russians don't do that. They just come with waves, kind of like Iran and the Iran-Iraq war, or Iraq too. They just come at you with waves and waves and waves. And there's a lot of people in Russia. There's 140 million people, and 70 million are men. And I imagine conservatively 20 million of them are men of fighting age, between 15 and 65. That's what you call fighting age in Russia. So each one of them can take a couple bullets or take a couple artillery rounds. I don't know. Because, of course, you're going to miss a few times and then you get one, or, so that's what they're doing. That's their stress. So when you see all these high body count numbers of Russians, actually that's what they're doing. I don't know how they're going to recover from this. Like I said, it is part of the U.S. NATO strategy that this weakens Russia. You're going to create like a real population crisis there, with all those men gone. And there's going to be a big imbalance, and then people are just going to be afraid to have kids. They're going to try to sneak their kids out of Russia and everything. So there is the long-term story is Ukraine wins this war, but is it going to be, it's just like eventually the Korean Peninsula will be reunited, right? It's just a matter of when, because those societies can't sustain themselves, and there's even like corruption, in those type of societies. The people who are at the top are in the know, and they kind of exploit it, and they can switch sides. So it's just a matter of when. But I think splitting the land bridge would put Ukraine in a good negotiating position, and then they just keep pounding Crimea, Sevastopol. I imagine not the civilian targets. They could hit the electrical infrastructure and these things to maybe create uprising. But warn, like the U.S. did in Iraq, they dropped flyers and leaflets that, hey, we're coming in tomorrow and we're bombing, or in Serbia, they gave warnings the day before that these areas are going to be under attack, so please clear out. To deprive, it's more important to deprive infrastructure than actually kill the people, deprive the building headquarters, deprive the ammunition, deprive the logistics. That has more of an effect. And if you tell them you're going to do it the day before, that really messes with their head. So if they can follow the American playbook there, and maybe they can turn those people in Crimea. But I don't know. The Russians seem to be pretty crazy. So yeah, I think with what they have, the limited supplies Ukraine is getting from the West, like I said, I've been advocating that they need more than the tanks. They need the tank factory here. They need more than the Patriots. They need the Patriot factory. They've only got 3 Patriot batteries. They need 3,000 of them, and then they need the factory to make the missiles. The Russians have been trying to go for it. Apparently the Patriot shot down a hypersonic missile. So these things are working really well. And I think it's, the onus is on America and Europe to just put all that stuff here. But, it's not happening. There's too many politics involved. People don't see things black and white anymore, good and evil. And it's pretty clear. It's pretty clear what it is, so. So we have to get the, I don't know what this spring offensive, it's, I'm cautiously optimistic. I think everything I'm saying here is what they know. They know entering the Crimea is going to be very difficult, but they can make it unbearable. They can make it so hard to live there, that people want to get out, and then they destroy that bridge, and then they have to get out by boat and everything, and just make it really miserable. I think that's what they can do. I think they can get between Mariupol and Kherson and break this bridge, as they say. It'd be hard. And they need aircraft for this. They need those missiles. They need a hell of a lot of artillery, longer range artillery. Because that's what the Russians are also doing, is they're using human waves backed by artillery. So, just these shells keep falling. They move ahead, 5 feet. Then they just keep doing another barrage. And then they're just like clearing, like block by block by block in like Bakhmut and places like this. It's and the American soldiers I've talked to that have been, over there and stuff, they just said they'd never seen artillery like this. And this artillery is like, they didn't have this in Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq. It's the terrain. First of all, I don't think the Americans were able to take out artillery quite easily with the air power. Air power counters artillery, with JDAMs and all of this, these kind of precision guided munitions, very good intelligence. So they don't have that in Ukraine. So it's like become like a World War I, World War II battlefield. And so yeah, they really need to do something, because artillery is mass produced. You can produce cannons like quicker than you can produce motorcycles. It's relatively low tech, but it is when you don't have to worry about like airstrikes and everything, becomes highly effective. So that's going to be like something they have to deal with, is this artillery issues. And I don't know if they can blast through. Then you have to get 30-40 kilometers where these cannons are sitting. They're sitting sometimes 20-30 kilometers behind, or sometimes 10. It's a lot of ground to cover to take out those positions, and then they can retreat and then just keep laying the barrage. So it's it's gonna be a hot summer, I can say that. It's not gonna be fun, and it's got me a bit worried, especially if the U.S. is gonna change political parties. This is just the beginning of like a minimum 4 years to weaken Russia, and then you have to wait out Putin to die, and then a balance can be restored, because I imagine whoever's going to succeed him doesn't want Russia in the Stone Age, because that's where it's going to go, these sanctions and stuff. Who knows? Maybe they people in his inner circle, they actually believe this versus being scared, because everyone knows what you do when you oppose Putin. You kind of just you drink some bad tea and you die. So I'm not sure if that inner circle is like really buying into this, or if he were to disappear, they would change their tune. We didn't see that with North Korea, unfortunately, even though Kim Jong-un was educated in Switzerland. So it's a mixed bag. The Russians are a bit different than North Koreans. A lot of them have experienced America. They have assets in the West. They want to send their kids to school in America. And so I don't know, we have to hit the Russian middle class. I think there has to be some sanctions there, no more letting them study in America and all this kind of stuff, or in Europe, and just start seizing assets. I think they've done all that. Yeah, it looks like we're heading for the Korean War here. It just looks like it's going to be a stalemate in the next 18 months. It's going to be a tough 18 months, and then somewhere there'll be a line drawn, and then we have to just wait. We have to wait. No side can claim victory. No side can say they were defeated, just like in the Korean War. And that's what it's looking like. I don't know. Anyway, take care.